Hello and welcome to Seven Waters. Good morning. I'm here with Joseph Biatch. My name is Nicholas Hessman. We're going to be speaking and sharing specifically about the solar plexus chakra today. For those of you that don't know, the solar plexus is located right here, right there, below the breastplate, below the sternum, that first soft spot in your abdomen. And according to chakra teachings in a variation of books and literature of all sorts, it's where your ego resides. It's where your most keen mind sits. It's the color yellow, and very important for this energy center to be balanced. An example of an overcharged ego would be my beloved grandfather, World War II veteran, yelling at me at the farm because of something I didn't do appropriately. In that moment, perhaps he's a little more angry than he should be, and he's yelling without control even of his thought. So his clear, rational thought for a moment is like spewing everywhere, and he's accusing his grandson of something he's not doing appropriately, and the overcharged chakra in that case is putting me in my place. However, Grandpa Ben would have to deal with that overcharged energy, and then it disperses into all the other energy centers. So regarding this chakra, in all walks of life, regarding if it's in our home, if it's with our children, our loved ones, if it's at work, this is a very challenging energy center. Now, the knowledge we have in the sacral and the foundation we have in the base all correlates to how we reside in our ego. Now, the ego is very important, and a lot of contemporary writing kind of speaks down on it, and it makes signposts. It says you're not supposed to have it. And for a while in my studies, I would, if for lack of better words, try to deny my ego. And there's some truth to that. However, having a healthy ego is quintessential. And so this isn't about chastening or tearing down the ego. It's about balancing it. Now, I used an example of my grandfather Ben ripping my butt as a kid on the farm. An example of him having a balanced third chakra in that moment would have been him coming to me and speaking to me in a clear, rational, and logic-balanced way that didn't overcharge me or make me feel in trouble, and didn't cause his system to go like this for a moment. Now, that example we probably can all relate to if we had a little moment of tantrum. So the fun part here to understand is it has to do with how you believe yourself to be, how you believe others to be, and what you think is most important in your life. And it's about self-acceptance or self-denial. So a really fun thing about the ego that's tricky, but if you realize this, it'll change your awareness of yourself. It's important to have it balanced and strong. You have to have it to have a healthy life. Whenever you find yourself shaming someone else and really having some form of iniquity or disregard, take a step back and say, maybe I've already denied myself somehow. Maybe I'm experiencing an internal form of shame or grief. Maybe I'm actually feeling guilty about something right now. And when these energy centers aren't able to deal with itself down here, it comes blasting out of the third chakra. And it is the element of fire. Like I said earlier, it's the color yellow. And like we all know, in this beautiful earth, we all need a strong and balanced ego. So as we talk about the solar plexus chakra, please don't think we're trying to turn it off. We're not trying to make it disappear. We're not trying to dissipate your ego. We want you to become more aware of it, what's above it and what's below it. I'll transition to you in just a moment. There's a lot of details on how to talk about the chakra, or the third chakra. The important part here with the solar plexus, in my opinion, we have to realize there's energy centers above it. An unhealthy third chakra on someone, they may be in a mindset that everything is just the solar plexus. Everything is just their ego. Nothing else matters but what they think and what they feel. So once this solar plexus is balanced and running in harmony with the other energy centers, then the heart opens up. So if you do not have this solar plexus balanced in you, whatever that means for you, it's going to affect your heart. It's going to affect your counsel, your communication, your counsel, your way of seeing others and giving your best foot forward in every situation. And then, furthermore, even to self. If this third chakra is not balanced, it's going to affect your self-love and self-hate and your awareness of your own foundation. Please understand that in most world religions, probably all, the third chakra to the fourth may be the salvific moment where a person's breaking out of just the physical earth, the demiurge, getting into the higher realms of the ethereal, divine, invisible, beyond explanation. So I beckon you, as we learn about the third chakra, to be very aware of the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And in doing so, it keeps the third balanced. Joey, you have the floor. What do you think? I didn't give as much of a definition as normal, more so an analogy.
So I would say the idea of the solar plexus would be, I would say the solar plexus you can think of when someone really craves and desires the limelight. Like, look at me, I'm on top of the world. I'm better than the rest of the people. I'm more wealthy, more successful, stronger body, more handsome, beautiful, or whatever. It's kind of like the peak of competition in some ways.
Yeah, willpower, control over self, control over others, exactly what you're saying.
And it says there's perfectionism.
Yeah, self-critical thoughts.
Self-critical. So the deal is that anyone that gets at the top, you know, the truth is, and I know this from sports, is that like eventually, you know, the next top dog comes, and then you got to get humbled. So, you know, the thing about the third chakra that Nicholas was saying too, and about the ego, is that we don't want to just completely demonize it, because it has a place. And in fact, one of the big issues that happens to a lot of people is they don't develop this well enough, and they don't have a strong enough sense of identity, and therefore they become doormat-like people. And if you don't have a solid sense of personal power, because that's what this center represents, then you become the doormat, which is the opposite of the, let's just say, the tyrannical ruler that wants to keep everybody under their thumb.
There you go.
So,
that's a very good example of an abuse of the third chakra, an exercise of tyranny over others and not letting the counsel of the heart reside in more love flow. Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
You're
very
good. So the idea is this has to be balanced, and another reason that it has to be balanced more so than demonized is because there will be times in our lives, and this will represent the movement from the third chakra to the fourth chakra in many regards, where we literally do have to stand up for something, or we have to sort of subordinate. Mm-hmm. And for the people that tend to have an overcharged chakra, third chakra, there's a moment where, all right, look, I gotta step down for a second, or step back. Mm-hmm. Whereas for other people, it's like, hey, I gotta step it up, and I've got to own my place in humanity. So it does us no good to demonize this chakra.
Wow.
Yeah, let me pass it back to you, man.
Well, endurance. I'm looking over a chakra chart. Joseph and I have been working and studying the energy centers our entire lives. And it's amazing the complexity and the simplicity in it. And like any good thing, the more you study it and read into it, it develops and it evolves, and you begin to see with new eyes. Here it speaks of endurance in the third chakra. Joey and I play baseball together. You have to be out there for 3 hours, plus warm up 4 hours. You have to have endurance to compete for 9 innings on and off the field and hustle. That brings a power into the energy center that for me would reside with me all week, the game I played on Sunday. And that energy center is quintessential for every one of us. However we find it in our lives. We might find it through gardening. We might find it through jogging, exercise, playing with our children. But it's about this inner child coming out. I wanted to point, Joey, as we talk about an adolescent, a youth, young adolescent, older adolescent, this energy center is developing right before you're hitting your puberty, as you're beginning to hit your puberty. What you go through at that stage in your life with your mother, your father, and all your family members is designing your ego and how you're going to deal with the rest of the world. So prior to about the age 8, I would say 7 or 8, you're not really dealing with this as much. You're getting to know it, but you're not as aware of it. And if we're going to the generativity model from Mr. Laritz, this is the peace. It's an interesting place of a peacemaker energy center. The person can't be on the top of the game and the best in the baseball diamond or wherever unless he's made peace with everyone he's playing with on some level. And then he's not going to have that peace unless he knows when he's dethroned for that moment that he's still got to have that peace. So he's being trusted. He's being elevated in his third, and he's being trusted. And non-verbally, people are like, you're going to get chopped down in a moment. Are you okay with it? I think you're okay with it. You go, man. You go. You're doing great. That's them moving it into the heart. Now, guys, vanity is here. This is sight. This is the lust and the desire of the eyes. I'm talking, if you know someone that just can't even control where their eyes go, and we all know what we're talking about here, they need to balance that energy center. They need to control what they're choosing their eyes to see. Sounds silly, doesn't it? I learned this as a bartender years ago, that where I put my eyes, it's feeding an appetite. So as a service and bartender, I committed to not staring at the beautiful women while they were coming up to get their cocktails I was making to serve to the people at the bar and the club. And it was a discipline I carried into other aspects of my life. I don't let my eyes rest on things that I know might not be healthy or good for me. Now, we think about smell. We brought up the base chakra's smell, the sacral chakra's ability of taste, and now we're talking about sight. The heart's touch. Talk about that later. This sight is important. When you become aware of the solar plexus chakra, you become aware of what you're looking at. You begin to dial back and say, do I need to be looking at this or not? So one aspect of this is to become more knowledgeable of the dynamic self that you are. And then when you start feeling tension, or you you can't make clear sense of everything going on in your life, you can say, whoa. This is just a part of me right now. This isn't my whole being. That's the magic of this work. When you start seeing that you're more than just one thing right here, and you're multiple energy centers, all flowing together in harmony, you can dial back and say, hey, I don't have to feel this overcharge. I don't have to be anger. I don't have to put shame over here on someone. I don't have to deny myself either. I can accept myself. So this solar plexus, in conjunction with the sacral chakra, both are probably the energy centers that need the most attention and exercise and balance in contemporary America. Because without these being balanced, the heart can't really do its work and line up. Joey, you have the floor, and what do you say off of that?
Well, that's a good way of saying it, is that in our contemporary culture, for a couple generations now, I guess, we've feasted our eyes upon the television, all right? And what we see on the television, so no wonder people crave limelight so much. Also, we were, mentioning that concept of when the third chakra becomes overcharged, it can lead to a concept of being a tyrannical ruler. Well, what we know is that this is our center of personal power. We just have this general truism in life that power tends to corrupt people. We have to be careful with our power.
We crave it, we desire it, but once we have it, it'll burn us if we're not holding it properly.
So we have to know how to appropriately disperse it. So the opposite of the tyrannical ruler would be the benevolent ruler, the one that actually steps back a bit and wants, instead of to be the, let's say, lone monarch or dictator, they'd rather have a council of people that are helping them.
Less rigidity, more flexibility.
Absolutely.
And the mind can do either. We can sit up here in this chamber of the mind. It was hard for me a long time to go, what are these books talking about? The solar plexus is the mental energy. How is this connected to this? And I go, what? Well, it is.
Yes.
And if you've ever done academia, if you've been in graduate school or anything, or PhD work, you can feel the tension of the chakras. There's less heart trying to connect and commune and counsel, and a lot more who's the best in the room. How can I ride this pedagogical? What is this pedagogy from this professor, and how can I be on top? And you can see in the eyes of a lot of the colleagues of yourself, you can see the fear. They're all pinned up, and it's like you can't even have a conversation with them. They're so worried about being right, being smart, and having the top, being the power in the room. And then what's weird? Boom, I recall many times I'd use my heart in that situation and bring in food from the dining hall that the dean or someone would give me and say, hey, take this to your class. And in that room, I would remember I'd have to turn off my ego. And I didn't want to do it, but I felt some of my colleagues that were so rigid. And I was like, man, I'm going to offer them food. And it was like 5 minutes before class is starting, and I'm that weird guy coming in. This food was given to me in the dining hall. It's going to be thrown away. And these guys they probably don't even like me. And I don't even know if they want to get to know my ego. I'm like, hey man, you want a donut? You want this granola bar? This is left over. That was my heart attempting to disperse an overcharged solar plexus chakra. Guys, it wasn't just mine. It was theirs. Everybody's in the room together. Everybody's was pumped up too much. Everybody's was overcritical and worried. And if everybody's worried, the heart turns off. So it's about having this clear, rational thought that is balanced. An example of a balanced solar plexus might be in the moment of reading a book, lying in a hammock, and you're reading and you're enjoying it so much you forget you're even in the hammock or you're reading. You're in the place of where the solar plexus is generative and it's doing its best. Now, to talk about the peacemaker mechanism of this, it's hard to understand that the ego wants peace, especially when someone's ego is being ugly and they're tyrannical. Deep down, they're still trying with all they have in that moment. If you can pull back the veil when you see someone in a moment of anger, a moment of anxiety, and if you can realize that they're really just asking for help, and they don't really want to be that ugly version of themselves, and if you can dial it back and turn this chakra down, if you will, and calm it, where theirs is overcharged, it automatically will open up the heart. What tends to happen, however, if someone, you bow back, and then the fight is on. And we've all been in arguments to where you leave feeling depleted and drained. That would be a bad use of your solar plexus chakra. And in that argument, you leave, you're hurting, you feel terrible. Your brain hurts, your spine hurts, your stomach's twisted, you can't eat. You're like, what just happened? These energies weren't flowing like they could have, and you actually have the autonomy to balance them. The solar plexus is harder in ways to speak about because you're listening to this with your ego, discerning if it's applicable, valuable, erroneous, purposeful, noise. You're back. What is this? Is this making sense to me? So what does it mean to you? What is your ego? What is your identity? You have to know who you are, and then automatically that matters on what you are and who you are to everyone else. So your ego, guys, is very important, and it's to be loved and nourished, but it's a very dangerous fire that, if given too much power, can burn yourself and can burn others. When this fire starts to happen in that way, it's your responsibility to accept yourself and channel these energies in a more balanced way. When you do understand this and start the flow and your own mode of operation to disperse an overcharged egoic energy in the solar plexus, when you start learning the pattern of healing yourself in that moment, it becomes enjoyable and fun. It's restorative for everyone. It can't be done, though, unless the sincere work of the solar plexus is taken care of. In the book of Isaiah 11, verse 2, the 7 attributes are lined out nicely. In the third chakra, it speaks of power and might. So we want this thing as powerful as it can possibly be, but in coordination with and in alignment with the energy centers above it. From a biblical concept, and you have the floor, the Luciferian energy in the world and of the demiurge is basically, it's only working solar plexus down. It's not opening into the heart. It's not speaking truth. It's not using intuition for what it's for and having the rest of divinity on it. It's not letting the peace flow. It capped it off. and it's running a microcosmic orbit. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's not letting into 4, 5, 6, 7. In the Christocentric teaching, the salvific moment is here. When you release the self into the heart, basically give yourself to your own heart, then your id, your ego, becomes a charitable community for everyone else to enjoy. In doing that, you keep your most centered self present. But none of that centered self and presence matters if it's not communal into the heart and helping and healing of others. But then, if it's undercharged, it becomes the doormat energy like Joey was talking about. And you become playing mindsets of victim or martyrdom, or the drudge. You just don't feel like you can get ahead, and you start to feel like you have to pull off of others because you don't have enough in your own presence. And we're here today to tell you that there's an abundance of energy, as taught in the core energy coaching curriculum of 7 Waters. Everyone is resourceful, everyone is whole, everyone is intuitive, and they know the answer. And it's not really about having a problem, it's about reframing where you are, who you are, what you are in life, looking at it with fresh eyes through the 3rd chakra, and balancing the rest of the energy centers. Joe, you want to say anything about that?
Well, yeah, you said a lot of really good things there. First of all, what I'd like to start off with is the ego. All right, in this center, it's based on a narrative, a story that we are telling ourselves, about others, and about the world. So we may think that it's odd that this center is our center of, let's say, mental activity. The reason this sort of works and how this makes sense in the chakra system is that at our base we're physical, at our sacral chakra we're emotional, and at our solar plexus we're mental. So what we do is we use our mental energy to create stories and narratives about our lives and the lives of others in our world, and we seek to determine in these stories whether we're empowered or disempowered.
Yeah.
And based on the narratives we're coming up with, what we do is if we have the right narrative, we realize that we're personally powerful regardless of our situation on so many levels. But if we don't feel that, what we do is we feel disempowered, and like Nicholas was saying, we need to pull from everyone else. So we'll see some of this in our society sometimes in terms of movements. We got to be very careful about what somebody or something means by empowerment. Yes, we want to empower people. However, we want to make sure that that power isn't of the corrupting type, or that it's actually being used to the benefit of, again, the heart represents humanity, the whole thing. So if we want to just charge that center just for ourselves and take over the world, that's when we become the Luciferian concept that Nicholas is talking about, and
don't want that. You don't
overthrowing
want that.
God. No, you don't want that. So, and what Nicholas was saying is how it shuts off 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When that's happening, these upper centers, there's like a perversion of them. So instead of like actually contributing to society, using our speaking truth and kindness, and using our intuition for the benefit of everything around us, instead we speak lies, we use our sixth sense to see what we can sort of notice about people and then use the heart as a place of manipulation. So I would say that the peak of the ego, the disordered ego, becomes highly narcissistic. And you talked about vanity. Well, vanity's kind of that sense of like wanting to look at yourself too much, but that's really minor compared to full-blown narcissistic, where you're trying to manipulate everything and trick people into doing things. It's a really nasty perversion of what this center is supposed to be. It's supposed to make us feel empowered, even though we're 1 in 7 billion people. We have power on this planet. So it's a really beautiful place when we're feeling good in it. So that's, I think that's
a physiological
about
perspective.
It. Yeah.
I just have a
Yeah.
few ways of kind of seasoning this to think about, well, how would I know if I had this going on in my life? Well, the first thing would be if you had actual pain in your solar plexus. Or on the backside, through your back, in these vertebrae, ribs, cartilage damage, anywhere across this area of your body. And secondly, like in some of my notes here, digestive troubles, fatigue,
Can't swallow it.
hypertension.
Yeah.
So the nervous system's directly connected. Your rational thought, you start losing your ability to cognate and flow in linear, clear, rational thought. It affects your nervous system. It affects the secretions in your tummy, how you digest food. When you're nervous and really nervous or going through a traumatic experience or a breakup, you can't eat the same. And you really feel it right there. I've been told some amazing things by people in the past. I'll feel it so powerful here. I mean, for days sometimes. What is going on? This is a very beautiful part of your body. It's about the orientation of self for self-gratification. You have to be able to tell yourself, I deserve to experience self-gratification. I deserve to be loved and respected. I'm cool, I'm good, I'm healthy, I'm alive. I have a balanced ego. I love others, I love myself, I accept myself. The dichotomy here is between initiative or guilt. I'm sorry. Guilt. Do you feel guilty? Or do you feel initiative? Do you feel the energy to act, to take action, and go get it, and go after it, and be physical? Put your eye on it and go after it. That's the third chakra. And if it's not working properly, you know what it does, guys? It sits around and with beady little eyes casts shame on everything. It just sits sits and watches the TV. It's safe. I'm not saying all television is bad. Or it sits wherever and it's observing other things. And if it's not, it's judging, being critical, it's abusing the use of the mind, and it's shaming others, and it's stealing energy from other people that need their energy for other energy centers. It's literally that person is sitting there by observing, snatching energy off of everyone if the chakra's not balanced.
It's like watching TV and watching the celebrities and throwing fiery darts at celebrities because they're getting somewhat more limelight and accolades.
So they can handle that dart.
Same thing with
I've seen it happen to
famous people
on all levels.
Yeah, and
all levels. I've seen it happen. And the shame mechanism, if you find yourself wanting to shame someone else, yes, if you're chasing a child that's done something wrong and they're playing with something that can hurt them, there's a moment of necessary, hey, shame on you for doing that if you want to use that term. But I'm talking about a consistent pattern, a mode of operation. Ladies and gentlemen, for the majority of you people that are doing this, you're not even aware you're doing it. That's why we're recording this video and teaching you about the solar plexus. Just because you can use your mind to one-up someone else and make them look deficient or less than, does not mean that's the best use of your internal apparatus. In fact, you're causing a lot of harm. So I'm asking you to check yourself right now so you can move into your heart even more. I'm passionate about this because I too, like everyone else, am working through balancing my energy centers. We teach others best, guys, what we need to know ourselves the most. I thank you for your reception to hear this video. I hope you feel some of the fire in our conversation. In our previous video, we spoke about the sacral chakra, and we're talking a lot more about creativity, self-love, and sexuality, fluidity. Do you feel the difference when we talk about the solar plexus right now? And it's fire. And
Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali. You know when they would say trance himself up. I'm the greatest. And that's that motivational kind of thing, and that helps us get that. But he was talking about his fight.
He was self-talking. He was preparing for a competition, and that was his way of pumping his energy centers up to be the best version of himself in that moment.
So there's a way to pump it up and feel good about yourself, like you're an important, that you are the best or something. But in the same breath, balanced with humility. It's just like we've talked about when in baseball, you hit a home run, that's an awesome moment. You don't run around the bases jumping and doing cartwheels. you bring it back to center. Likewise, you make an error, you don't just like start smacking yourself in the face. I suck at baseball. I'm terrible. Blah blah. No, you bring
It's
it
hard.
back. So yeah,
sometimes.
sports is one of the best examples. Of like, you just gotta keep it in its appropriate place.
Like you missed the ball,
And
it falls on the ground. Your whole team's like,
what's going on?
"Damn, man, come on."
So
Digestive troubles.
Digestive troubles. That's not.
Hypertension, fatigue. So this has so much to do about you eating well and your nutritive intake, your earth fire. You have a metabolic fire right here burning and it needs food. And keep in mind, if you're feeling like you can't think clearly and all, you might just need some simple sustenance and some carbs. On this chart, it speaks about the third chakra, complex carbs and grains. Like clean, yummy carbohydrates and protein. Like it's good for you. You need that in your system to balance. Thank you for your attention today in the Seven Waters Energy Center discussion regarding the solar plexus chakra. We hope this has made some sense to you, clarity, rationality around this energy center. And I'd like to close in speaking about someone that I think is awesome, but may not have had this awareness in his development. I could be wrong, but I'm speaking about Martin Luther. And not Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream. I'm talking about Martin Luther of the Reformation and the theses on the door of the papal authority. And in his story of sorts, his narration, he was known amongst his brethren, his monk buddies, he was known amongst his people to be overly critical and shame himself, and he would torment his flesh. He would lay in the cold, and he would basically purge himself to a point that was, in my opinion, perhaps unhealthy. He didn't know any better in that moment, but his solar plexus didn't want to be in the way of knowing God, and he could feel his iniquities, and he would shame himself and lay in the cold and hypothermia, and his brothers would have to carry him inside and say, "Martin, stop, what are you doing, man?" And he was seeking the divinos, but in my opinion he was becoming a spiritual drudge. He didn't mean to, but for a moment in that, and I mean, come on, dude hooked us up.
Perhaps a spiritual perfectionist.
And he was beating himself in that moment. Instead of being the spiritual warrior of like, yeah, I'm not going to lay in my snow. I'm not going to lay in the snow and kill myself to show I love God. There's a perversion there, guys.
Realizing that grace abounds.
And I don't know exactly why I brought up Martin Luther in that, but I almost have felt bad for him when I've read in the past. I'm like, why was he so hard on himself? Perhaps he didn't know that this was just one energy center. Perhaps he was thinking, this is all of me right here, all of me. When the heart opens up, it changes it. And all respect to Martin Luther in every way, shape, and form. I simply wanted to point out the solar plexus chakra. Had he more awareness of it, he maybe would not have been so ascetically hard on himself, and maybe have found a more balanced ascetic approach. He, of many, 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 many thousands of people, have done similar actions. And so I'm asking you to check it in a balanced way. And if it is checked in a balanced way, it doesn't become a martyr. It becomes a sovereign, unless it's forced to be a martyr.
It accepts its own imperfections.
And
it doesn't have to be against that spiritual perfectionism. The idea that grace abounds, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have your physicality, emotionality, and mentality all just completely perfect in order to get into the heart. But the idea is the more that we can kind of clean that stuff up, the more heart energy we're going to have, and the more we're going to be able to receive the grace that's already there. So remember that fire can warm or fire can burn, but we need some fire.
Absolutely. Thank you for this conversation. We'll see you guys next week. We'll be speaking about the heart chakra, and you will experience the difference there as well. Good day, and more to come. All the best. Bye-bye.